Week 12 notes. This is GCF factoring. GCF factoring. So we will be taking the GCF in this lesson is very similar to the way we did last lesson. But I need to tell you what factoring is. What is factoring? Well, before you write all this stuff down, you can write this right above it. And it is basically this. If you have something like 2 times the quantity x plus 3, and you were to multiply this out, you know how that works, right? You distribute the 2 to the x and then the 3, and then you get something that looks like 2x plus 6. Okay, so that was called distribution or distributing. In factoring, essentially, it is when you go the other direction. This is factoring. So if you go from something like 2x plus 6 to this, something with parentheses, that is what factoring is, going back the other direction. So essentially, it's just reverse distributing. Reverse distributing. And that's what this whole lesson is about. But how do you do that? Well, first you find the GCF of all the terms. In that case, in this case, it would be 2x and 6. You'd find the GCF. And in fact, the GCF is really the term that's right here on the outside. Then you would put that term right out in front and then put the parentheses. But then to find the terms inside the parentheses, like the x and the 3, you would divide all the terms by the GCF. So you divide 2x by 2, and then 6 by 2, and then you'd get x and then 3. And then you write your answer in the proper form with parentheses and signs all correct. So that's where this lesson is going. Let's do our first example. Take a moment to write those down. We have to factor the following: 4x squared minus 3x. First step, we have to find the GCF of all the terms. So the GCF, I'll write step 1 right here. The GCF is of the numbers 1, because that is the biggest number you can divide both 4 and 3 by. So the GCF is 1, and then of the variables, what are the common ones? Well, clearly it's an x and then an x. So we're going to have x to the power of something, and then what was that something that goes in the box? You look at the exponents. If they're the same, then that is what goes in the box. If they are different, you pick the one that's lower. In this case, it's the 1 right in the box. So the GCF is simply x, 1x to the first power. Step 2, you put the GCF out front. So you take this GCF, you put it out front of the parentheses. That's going to go right there. And then you're going to have something that looks like that. For step 3, we need to figure out what is going to be going right there and right there. So this is going to become something that will go right there. And this right here, the negative 3x, is going to be something that goes right there. But we will have taken out the x from this, and we will have taken out the x from this. So that is step 3, dividing all terms by the GCF. Okay, so step 3, we'll take 4x squared. And just so you know how to divide things out, I mean, maybe you know the answer to this right away, maybe you don't. But what is 4x squared divided by x, which is our GCF? So 4 divided by 1, you can always put a 1 in front here. That's going to be 4, and then the x to the x squared over the x to the first will be x to the 2 minus 1. And that's how you do that whenever you have the same base, which is the x here. So this is a base, this is an exponent. Whenever you have the same base, you have one divided by the other. You can take the exponent of the numerator and subtract it, or actually take the exponent of the denominator, subtract it from the numerator. Okay, so then 2 minus 1, that is 4x to the 1, or just 4x. That is the first term, and then the next term we have negative 3x divided by our GCF. And you can put a 1 here in the front if you want, but that's going to be negative 3 divided by 1. And then x divided by x. Well, what's that? Well, anything over itself is 1, so then that would just be 1, which is just negative 3. So these two things, folks, are what are going in the parentheses right here. They're what we get when we divide our GCF by both of these terms. And I'll use the terminology of take out. We took out x. We divided out x. And then we got our final answer right here. And I kind of just want to write it in here because it's more satisfying. But plus, actually, I should have put a minus, but that's a negative 3 in there. So our last step is just writing the answer, and your answer is going to look like this. X, and then you've got a 4x minus 3. We factored out the x, as it were. That's how we say it. We factored out x, and that is GCF factoring. Now let me do another example, and I will spend less time explaining all of this, but that's really what I'm doing in my head. Our next example is 10y to the third power plus 30y squared minus 5y. All right, now we have 3 terms. How do we find the greatest common factor of 3 terms? Well, we just have to find the biggest number we can divide all of them by. So thinking about all the factors of 5, well, we have 1 and 5. So a good way to figure this out is just look at the small number right here and ask yourself, can I divide both of these numbers by this number? And the answer is yes. And since the answer is yes, and I can divide 5 by itself, that means that 5 is the greatest common factor of the numbers. So our first step would be to find the GCF, step 1, and the GCF is 5. Then what we want to do is put that 5 out in front. Actually, I'm going to go to the next step here. So put the 5 out in front. And then we need to figure out what is going to go here, and then here, and then here. There's going to be a plus sign here and then a minus sign here corresponding to the plus sign here and the minus sign there. So when we, oh, actually, sorry, the GCF of the numbers, I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to take the GCF of the letters too. So the GCF is 5, and then we have a Y here, and then we have a box right there. I got ahead of myself totally on that, but I'm glad I caught myself. So we have a 3, a 2, and a 1. So since they're not the same, we're going to take the lowest one, which is a 1 right there. Boom. All right. That is our GCF. Really, it's just 5y. Okay. So now I'll just put the y out in front. 5y. And we've taken out the 5y, so that means we're going to have that divided by 5y right there, that divided by 5y right there, and then this negative 5y divided by 5y right there. So let's do that real quick off to the side here. So 10y cubed over 5y. Well, 10 divided by 5 is 2. And then y to the third over y to the 1 is just y squared, or y to the 3 minus 1 equals 2y squared. Okay, so 2y squared is going to go right here. And in this box, we're going to have 30y squared divided by 5y equals 30 divided by 5 is 6. Y squared over y is just y, because it's y to the 2 minus 1, which is just y. So that's what's going to go right here. Okay, I don't want to go too fast here, but I'm doing all this division off to the side so you can see what's happening. All right, and then we have negative 5y divided by our 5y. And that equals, well, anything over itself is 1, and then we have a negative sign. So that just is going to be a negative 1. So that is what's going to go right here. And we already have the negative here, so minus 1. And that is our answer. This is our GCF, or not our GCF, but I'm sorry, that is our factored form of this. We GCF factored out the 5y.